Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1496 of our daily content grind. Yes, we're getting very close to a big milestone. And it's going to fall on a Monday, so we're not going to do anything special for it just yet. We'll do something though. We'll do something. So this is one of those fun days where I was working on one video idea and then did a little bit of digging back into my backlog of near 1,500 videos in the last 4+ years and realize I've actually done something very similar to this last year. So we are going to not waste the image gathering or the research. We're just going to alter the plan, which is why we're doing a debate today. But first we get to the business of last time, and I am happy with you guys. So the results are overwhelming. Yes, Partforming is a-okay with a lot of you. An overwhelming degree of you are okay with Partforming. If you had asked this question a few years ago, even, well, maybe not a few years ago, but like 10 years ago in this fandom, when everything was still very much like things are kind of sacred and have to be a certain way, you probably would have gotten a very different answer. But I feel like Hasbro has presented so many toys to us that had great advantages from Partforming that it's become so much less of a taboo than it used to be. Used to be it wasn't a real transformer if parts came off and had to be reattached. You know, and there's still plenty of people who aren't really happy about that, but a lot of the Partforming today is actually a lot smarter. You know, you have the upcoming Thundercracker toy where, yeah, there's Partforming to hide the tail fins, but you can leave them right where they are and just rotate them out of the way. You know, it's not cartoon accurate, but you don't have to do it. So the optional is nice, and Hasbro's a lot more aware of that, and that's a good thing. I think that goes into the right direction. So yeah, it's good to see that it's becoming more acceptable, and yeah, there have been a lot of good uses of Partforming. So we can forgive it. I don't think it's the taboo anymore, and thank you for being my little experiment to tell me that, yeah, we don't really have to hold ourselves to that any longer. Now, we have a far more heated debate this time, because this is going to test your recent Transformer fan time. So, Arcee, right? Arcee, the de facto female of the Transformers brand, has been since 1986 because she's the very first Transformer to have a role of prominence in the original cartoon. We do, however, acknowledge a few things. Number one, while she was seen in multiple episodes, she's the first recurring character, female character, in the franchise for the Transformers themselves. She really doesn't have a lot of character story to her. You know, the only character-driven story she gets is once they get into Rebirth, and that's more Daniel and Arcee rather than Arcee herself. And it's a very weird story. It's a very weird story. Point being, even though she's the first prominent female Transformer, she gets moments and she gets scenes, but she never gets a story of her own. So she's still not taken seriously as a character. And we acknowledge the other part, she's not the first. Despite what pop culture would tell you, she's not the first female Transformer. No. Elite has a far bigger claim to that title than Arcee does. And technically, even Elite can't claim that. It's a three-way tie between Firestar, Chromia, and Moonracer. But that's beside the point today. The point today is that Elite-1 is the first prominent, like, major character female that we had in the franchise. Even though she was only available for one episode, she is still held in very high regard. Because let's keep this in mind. In canon, in fiction, this woman is the leader behind, you know, keeping, like, Cybertron in order while Optimus Prime was gone. That's a pretty huge deal, I think. So with, like, Arcee, we're already going to begin this, like, we're already going to begin this back and forth. Arcee's got a lot more appearances than Elite-1, but she also doesn't have nearly as much effectiveness. Whereas she's a good sniper and she is good to have as, you know, backup in a fight, she doesn't really get a whole lot of prominence herself in each episode. And that's the difference here, is that she's still just kind of rank and file soldier while still having this kind of motherly aspect to her. Whereas Elite-1, character-wise, kept the planet together and saved the surviving Autobots from Shockwave for 4 million years. That's not a small achievement. You know, she took what could have been a tragedy, losing Optimus Prime, the greatest leader they ever had, and she followed in his footsteps for 4 million years and kept the planet safe for the remaining Autobots. That's not a small feat. But Arcee's in the movie. Arcee has multiple appearances, so Arcee is the one that gets to rise to prominence. So when they start having the debate again of adding female Transformers back into the fiction, we got a few during Beast Wars, but then they kind of faded them out again once they went back to Autobots and Decepticons, only toying with the idea of it in Energon, and only at the basic price point. We don't want to ask boys to pay more than $7 to get a girl. So yeah, small footsteps into the water, and yet it is Arcee that is leading the way, and they continue to use that when we have a movie. We have live action movies now, so Arcee makes an appearance. Kinda, sorta. She looks like her lower half went through a thresher, but she's in the movie. Yes, technically Chromie and Elite-1 are too, but that is because they needed more names for the toys and the comic books for all the different parts. In the movie, she is usually defined as Arcee, the Arcee triplets. So at least she's named in the movie. That's more than I can say for a lot of characters that came and went. But little bit parts here and there. But really, we look at Transformers Prime. This changed everything. Prime Arcee kind of changed the depiction of that entire character. She's not just the token girl on the team. She is a warrior herself. She's entirely capable. She might be weaker, you know, in firepower and physical abilities, but she makes up for it in other ways. And yeah, she's a very cool, collected character. You know, if you don't mention Tailgate. Point being, this depiction of Arcee did tremendous things for the character. She was finally getting toys just like any other Transformer was, in multiple size classes, in multiple variations. You know, she had a first edition figure. She had a Prime RID figure. She had a Beast Hunters figure. She had a Legion class figure. She had pretty much everything that a male Transformer would get. And yeah, it did huge things for the character. But in recent years, we've kind of seen that tail off quite dramatically. Arcee is now kind of thrown in as either like the member berry thing, where like, oh hey, do you remember her? She's here now. And then just kind of like put aside, you know. Skybound has uses for Arcee, but you know, they are uses that are almost circumvented, you know, like she's kind of the protector of Carly right now, but Carly has a brand new protector coming. So what is Arcee going to do now? And then, of course, in Earthspark, she's a one-episode character who just kind of appears as, you know, crowd filler when the Autobots need more bodies on the field. So her prominence is definitely shrunken. Like, even in Transformers 1, she's a background character, like nameless in the movie. Things are changing, and it's this rise of Elite-1 that is causing it. All of a sudden, I'm not sure why, but writers have suddenly decided that Elite-1 is the more fascinating character to work with. And in a way, they aren't wrong, you know? She's a female character in a command position. And in some stories, yeah, she is the significant other of Optimus Prime. But that said, it is rare that I see a depiction of Elite-1 where her story is just about making Prime more, I don't know, more equatable, I should say, like more relatable because he has a significant other, or, you know, or for dramatic effect. Like Netflix, yeah, they kill off Elite-1. But it doesn't seem to be as much for just like the sake of bumping up Optimus Prime's story, as Elite and the Autobots on Cybertron were also telling a story that was going parallel to what Optimus was doing. There's an air of tragedy to how it turned out, but I wouldn't say she's like a woman in a refrigerator situation, for you comic book fans out there. Beside my point, though, the point is Arcee is in Netflix series, kind of just around. She doesn't really get to do a whole lot besides pal around with Bumblebee for a few missions. But Elite-1, again, command position, in a second in command role, no less. And she ends up there a lot now. Earthspark saw Elite-1 as a fairly prominent character, but interestingly enough, like, very different. And this one thing that starts occurring to me when I start looking at all these different depictions of these characters is that Elite-1 seems far more malleable. Writers seem to be having a far easier time writing things for her and having her fit whatever they need for the story, rather than just like sticking to one depiction. Now, on one hand, that does mean her original characterization gets lost from time to time, but on the other hand, it does mean that she gets to do a wider variety of things, and she gets to be different characters. In this series, she is second in command to the Autobots, Optimus Prime's most trusted, and she comes across as kind of like a scrappy, rough and tumble, kind of like a few anger issues kind of character. But she comes across as a very solid character, and she has moments that give her some depth too. So she's grown a lot. And she's kind of the similar stature in Transformers 1, but she's far more goal-oriented. Yeah, she eventually becomes Prime's second, but that's after they've already ignited saved the planet from Sentinel Prime and ignited a war with Megatron. But leading up to that, it takes her a while. It takes her a while to actually come to terms with just being a team player. She's very, before then she's very solo, has kind of an attitude, and really does not like our heroes. Gets used to them. And also brings up another point, like the romance that you remember in the original G1 cartoon. The romance with Optimus Prime was a forefront character dynamic for her, but it's played differently from here on out. In Earthspark, it's tongue-in-cheek. In Netflix, it's very prominent. In this series, in 1, doesn't exist. They have a trust, not an emotional attachment, though. So they have very different depictions across them. Whereas Arcee kind of maintains what she's always done. She's a good gunner. She's a good hand on the battlefield. And she does get to be a bit more of a caring character. And for the most part, that's her characterization. Arcee is a lot more stable. And if you like stable, and if you like having like consistency with her legacy design and legacy characterization, Arcee's generally the better go-to. She tends to stick to what she is a lot more often. Whereas you can see Elite-1 and her constant changing as a downside, certainly, because, yeah, that does mean the writers are kind of just doing whatever they want with her, and she doesn't have like a in-place characterization. Optimus, Megatron, Starscream have like solid, like tent post characterizations. And Elite-1 is just kind of wherever the stick has to be to hold the tent up a little bit longer. But that said, I find that her roles tend to hit more complexity than Arcee's do. Even in G1, you have this character who had to survive a war for 4 million years without their leader, and basically is the leader on Cybertron while Prime is gone. But she's still holding a candle for him, and she's still willing to risk everything for him. So she hasn't like given up on him or anything, even after all that time, led by his example. So there is a bit of depth to that, even if the writers didn't intend it. Nowadays, we have Elite-1 with an incredible amount of depth, like tremendous amount of depth to this Elite-1. Yes, she's a very complex character these days. Even in Earthspark, I would say she has a bit of complexity to her, especially when she's mentoring Jawbreaker a little bit. And then in Skybound, obviously, you know, she has a lot of interesting, like, little twists to how her character works. And she's a little bit of every Elite-1. Just a little bit of every Elite-1. Whereas Arcee, like I said, tends to kind of just do her thing. That said, she does break out of that shell every now and then. There was that time she was a complete psychopath. Now, the reasons why, we don't get into anymore. We just all mutually agree that Simon Furman shouldn't write female Transformers anymore. And then we all just kind of like hear that, and we just kind of collectively keep our mouths shut, but we're nodding in agreement. So the point is, this Arcee does evolve a lot from this point, and she does have justification for being like this angry. But this is still one of the most iconic visuals from IDW 1.0, and it does give you an enormous appreciation for how far the Arcee comes as a character in those books, from being this raving lunatic that's slicing up anything in her path to being a protector on Earth with a girlfriend. It's a huge twist. It's a huge character arc for her. So yeah, every now and then Arcee does break out. Still kind of falls back into feeling like Arcee, you know, IDW 2.0. She definitely just kind of feels like Arcee. But you know, every now and then, yeah, she can be a raving lunatic too. But then again, it isn't just Arcee who gets to be a psychopath once in a while. The only time I really saw Arcee break out of her shell in a way that I really enjoyed was Cyberverse. Cyberverse Arcee is a really fun take on the character, where, yeah, like, she doesn't have that, like, motherly side that comes through in a lot of her other depictions. She's not, like, the caretaker that she ends up being. Even in Prime, she comes across very caretaker. But here, she's an adventurer. She has, like, stories. She is very social media coded in a way, because she is always about recording and photographing what she is doing, but it's always this like high adventure stuff. Her and Grimlock comparing notes, her wielding a massive gun just because she's capable. It's action hero Arcee, and I'm all about it. So it's rarer when she breaks out, but she does break out every now and then, and it's usually memorable. Usually. But then again, right now, we are sitting in this situation where, once again, she seems to have taken a back seat. After Rise of the Beast, she was notably just a minor character, if only a background character in Transformers 1, while Alita got total prominence. And now we have the new cartoon, Cyberworld, where Elite-1 is the only female Autobot in the show. And we have no sign of any Arcee whatsoever. And that's just kind of been the norm, like with Earthspark being just mostly Elite-1 and Arcee's only there a little bit. So they've definitely been jockeying for position the last decade. But Arcee is definitely taking a backseat right now. Doesn't ignore her history, but is definitely giving Elite-1 a shot. So that leads me to the question and the debate. Who is the female of the Transformers franchise? And now I know you guys have your favorites. I know. Trust me, I know. You're a Nautica fan. You're a Slipstream fan. I've done a whole video about how fantastic Black Arachnia's character is. But that said, this is about the two most prominent females of the franchise, especially given modern media. And this is now up to you. Is it the classic Arcee, you know, that carries on that like tradition and like has that prominence from the original cartoon? Or is it Elite-1, who's breaking out of her one episode role and has been fleshing out her character in many different ways? So that's your debate. It's linked in the description below on this video. Please go leave your opinion, and as always, when we do the next debate, I'll let you know what the results were. And thank you everyone for participating in said vote. These kind of videos really don't work if you guys do not leave a vote below. I appreciate you doing so. And with that, I am done for the day. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.